This podcast is proudly sponsored by Gyro Drilling. They provide world-class drilling solutions for all types of projects. They specialise in auger, aircore and RC drilling. Head to the team at Gyro Drilling for all your mining needs and see how they can help you with your upcoming project. Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. As this podcast grows, every subscriber helps. From those of you who watch this on YouTube or to those that listen on Spotify and Apple, every follower helps. If you do this one favour and hit follow on whatever platform you find us on, I promise I will continue to look and find fascinating people across the world and bring their perspectives to you. Thank you and enjoy this episode. Hello, I'm Ben Kostrich and this is the Market Bull Podcast. Joining me today on the show is Malcolm Day, the Managing Director of Moab Minerals, which is listed on the ASX under code MOM. It's predominantly uranium focused, and as we know, the uranium spot price is at a very healthy level at the moment, touch wood, but he's here today, first time doing a podcast as well, so welcome Malcolm.
Morning Ben, how are you?
I'm great, it's good to have you. I originally reached out ages ago as I was just starting out, and you're one of the ones I wanted to get on and speak with. So I'm glad I've managed to persuade you to finally get behind the microphone. So for those that are unfamiliar with your background initially, what's your exposure within ASX-listed companies and more so the mining scene?
So look, I went to Curtin University and did a surveying and mapping degree. I spent just over a year up at Argyle, working for John Hollands on road construction and airport construction as a surveyor. Then I went down to Albany to work on the reconstruction of the Albany airport and to allow the Fokker F-28s to land. And that was interesting, and that was as an engineering surveyor. I then spent 2 years in the bush out of a Survey West office up in Kalgoorlie, doing exploration surveys, pegging tenements, the old PLs or prospecting licenses. We still had to bang pegs in the ground. And I was also doing open pit mine surveys. So this was pre-GPS, so they would actually need a surveyor to go and calculate cubic metres which come out of the ground, or tons of resource. So, and that was generally 2 to 6 weeks at a time, living in a two-man tent with no power. So I take a Land Cruiser ute out, or tray top, where the whole tray would have two 44s on the back, 44-gallon drums, one with diesel, one with water. There was never enough fuel for a generator. So anyway, after 2 years of that, I come to my boss and said, look, this is really not the life for me, living in tents. Not great for my bank account, not too good for my personal life. My boss actually said, look, Mel, this is character building. I said, well, it's not the character I want to build anymore. So I started working on high-rise construction as an engineering surveyor, and that morphed into becoming a civil engineer. My last job as a civil engineer was working with Leighton's as a senior civil engineer, and that was on the construction of the Wandoo subsea oil project down in Bunbury, which I worked on for 12 months. It was really challenging, and I think in the first week I remember scratching my head thinking, what have I got myself into here? But I persevered, and and because it was so challenging, it was so interesting for me. Yeah, and then look, back in 1999, I came up with a great idea for a new public company, and I had a Japanese lunch, cheap one, which didn't do the deal justice, with a good friend of mine at the time, Adam Rankin-Wilson, who was an investment banker, ex-stockbroker. He introduced me to Gavin Argyle. He was the head of investment banking at Hartley Pointons at the time, and they assisted me with doing a backdoor deal with Western Minerals to put a tech play into it. And we relisted Western Minerals' new name in June 1999. July 1999, we listed on the 7 German stock exchanges. By December 1999, that company had gone from a market cap of only a couple of million through to almost 700 mil. Caught up in the whole dot-com boom, and it was exciting times, really challenging. And then, of course, we also got caught up in the dot-com downturn, 2002. And years later, 2022 in fact, the company recomplied with Chapters 1 and 2 of the ASX listing rules and come out the other side as Moab Minerals, with a number of projects, a couple of projects in the US, a couple of projects here in Western Australia. And now recently we've signed a deal to acquire these projects in Tanzania.
Tanzania, okay. Well,
yes, the locals pronounce it Tanzania.
I was unfamiliar with that. But that's really where the majority of the conversation is focused on is Tanzania, because you've recently brought in a new project to the company, and we were just talking about before, the benefit of uranium, the price now, and it's now real feasibility for being long-term projects and bringing more supply online. So can you talk us through a little bit about this project and maybe some of the history of Tanzania in the uranium space potentially?
Yeah, sure. So we signed up the deal, announced it to the market only, I think, 2 months ago. We were introduced to the deal, I think, October, November last year. So we did a significant amount of due diligence on it. I went to site with our consulting geologist, Jeff Balfe, in January this year. We travelled over through Dubai to Tanzania. And we also took 2 of the main vendors over, one of them who's a geologist, Chubb, come along with us as well. So we went out in the field. Interesting, there was, I think, at one stage, either 4 or 5 geologists, including a couple of local geologists and myself. So I was in pretty good company and learning a lot. But one of them brought a scintillometer along, which essentially measures, or in this case, uranium.
Yeah.
Right. In saying that, thorium also produces the same sort of result on a scintillometer. But that was interesting, watching that buzz everywhere we went on the ground over there. So the two projects we've acquired is the Manyoni project and the Octavo project, and they're both at different levels of development. So just quickly, the Octavo project, that's south of the Manyoni project. That's adjacent to the Nyoto world-class deposit. That was explored by Mantra, which was ASX listed, pre-2011. They sold it to a Russian company, which is now Rosatrom, and they sold it for just over 1 billion. So that has a resource of 152 million pounds at a grade of 286 ppm uranium. So from the radiometric surveys we have, we can see similar anomalies coming through to the Octavo project. They touch in the top left-hand corner. So it's got a lot of potential. One of the downsides, it's in the Selous National Park. So there's some permitting challenges with that. The primary focus is the Manyoni project, uranium project. So basically, to get there, we flew into Dar, then we then go to Dodoma, and then from Dodoma, which is only an hour's flight, then from Dodoma, we drove a couple of hours to the town of Manyoni. That's quite a well-developed town. There's quite a new railway and sealed highway there as well, and of course there's power and water close. So the Manyoni project is only about 5 kilometres north of the Manyoni town, 2 tenements. That was explored from 2004 right through to 2009 by a listed company called Uranex, and at the end, I'd say 2008, they employed a consultant called Hellman and Schofield to calculate an MRE, or a mineral resource estimate, and they published that resource estimate on the ASX on 30th of June 2010, and basically it was the MRE they came up with was 20.5 million pounds at a grade of 147 ppm uranium. So the great thing for us is that there's already existing resource. Now that is not JORC 2012 compliant. One of our first steps is to bring it up to a 2012 MRE, but at least we're starting from a point where we know there's uranium there, and I've actually been there and seen it, and seen the scintillometer move. It's all flat. The resource is from ground down to a maximum about 15 metres, so it makes it for cheap and easy and quick mining.
Yeah. Well, the as we talked about just before, the upgrading it and getting it to a JORC 2012. I mean, can you elaborate a bit more about accelerating and getting that? What are some of the processes involved in acquiring that label? I guess that's the way to phrase it.
So whilst we signed up the deal a couple of months ago, we still have a couple of conditions to finalise. We won't settle until probably June, mid-year. We're still doing lots of planning in the background. So the first thing we have to do is to do some water testing right, in relation to levels of radiation in the water before we start drilling, etc. And then once we've completed that, then we'll start the drilling. So at this stage, we think we'll be drilling June, July. So one of the things we have to do, we have to run an ad in the local newspaper. This is all about local content, using local content where we can. So we run an ad in the newspaper. We call for tenders. We've already started meeting some drillers. They'll all go through the tender process. But we've already got that in train, even though we haven't completed the acquisition yet. So we're just marching forwards on the basis that we can hit the ground running as soon as we complete. So again, that resource, 20.5 million pounds, 147 ppm uranium, that is a pre-2012 resource. We'll just go back a few steps. So obviously Fukushima happened in 2011. You know, we had the tsunami, and then of course
uranium price
plummeted, and no one wanted to know about it. The Uranium project, like many other exploration or pre-development projects worldwide, were all shelved. And that's why that project didn't advance from there. And it was only last year when uranium went over the $50 to $60 US a pound sort of mark that this project, like many others worldwide, come to the fore, and you know, with excitement bubbling around. And also the ability to raise capital for explorers was a lot easier with a higher price. So anyway, we've got the existing resource. Our first step is to convert that resource to a 2012 JORC compliant resource. To do that, we have to do two things. First, we have to do some more drilling. So Uranex drilled around 3,000 holes, which form the basis for the calculations for that existing MRE. We need to drill about 300 holes, confirmatory holes, and that will be what we call twinning. So in other words, adjacent to existing holes. Obviously, we pull up the core, we send it off for testing, etc. So that's step one. We're going to do some trenching and some bulk samples as well. And we need to do the metallurgical testing with that. So we need to get a good handle on the confidence in the previous drilling, previous exploration results. And given it was so many years ago, and 3,000 drill holes is a lot of drill holes. There's a fair bit of data to go through. But that's our first step. We've already started all the planning process. We'll hit the ground running June, July drilling.
So yeah, there's a fair bit. And I mean, that was one of the other bits that I was just grappling in my mind was some of the differences, especially with uranium exploration. There's almost this, I don't know, association with it because of what's happened in the past. And there's always those sorts of, I don't know, fears that people have. So when, you know, you're talking about water treatment and understanding that, what are some of the other, I guess, differences between uranium exploration compared to some of the other resources like, you know, iron ore or copper or gold or stuff like that?
I think it's primarily just the presence of the radiation or you know, associated with uranium. I mean, you know, project we have in Colorado, sending samples through to ALS for assaying, we had problems with the levels of radiation. We couldn't send it on trucks. We couldn't send it via plane. You've got to go through. Well, you've got to go through special. There's a procedure for doing it. So we'll probably have similar issues in Tanzania.
Yeah, so that's another consideration that, yeah, this resource at least you don't really, there's no other way really around it from the sense of it. No.
That's probably only the primary difference. Otherwise it's
it's mining, it's exploration.
It's exploration.
Yeah, that's why I always, you know, talk about new technologies coming online to help with exploration, and they kind of they're applied to a lot of them, and that's where, you know, I get the pleasure of exploring it because it's not my sort of background. But I mean, we're talking about the acquisition, and I mean, I noted that the Moab acquisition is about 81.85% of ownership. I mean, I was curious as to that number specifically. Can you give us a little bit more insight into, guess, that story or the background or what's going on with the ownership of it?
Okay, so essentially, Moab is going to buy 81.85% of Link's resources. I'll come back to why that percentage. But that in turn owns 100% of a UK listed company, which owns 80% of Katika Resources, which is a local company in Tanzania. You know, the reason there's a UK company interposed is because Tanzania and the UK have a trade agreement, etc. And if there's any issues, we're in country, then they're basically essentially sorted out in the courts.
I've had previous conversations with things like that. Yeah.
Yep, and it's recognised and all agreed. Now, going back to why we're only acquiring 81.85%, there were two shareholders who were happy with the original deal because originally we loaned the company money, and they were happy on that basis. And then when it come time to acquire all the shares, they changed their mind.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's fine. They're two minority shareholders, and yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It was one of those points where I saw it, I was like, oh, it's a interesting specific amount without sort of exploring all the details from a top line. And I mean, going into this region, I mean, understanding, the people and the culture and how they operate, I mean, are you now sort of understanding a bit more about their history and an approach to mining and more so, I mean, what is the environment like for mining in Tanzania?
Well, go back a few steps. I never felt unsafe in Tanzania, which is great. I first went there 2009. I took 18 people from Perth. We climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which is 5,895 metres. It's the highest freestanding mountain in the world. It was a significant challenge, but in my capacity as chairman of Breast Cancer Care WA, I did that. We raised $100,000 for the charity, and the logic was to try and achieve a physical challenge, but also assist women in Western Australia tackle breast cancer. Right? And I remember back then falling in love with the people. They're so friendly, so nice. In fact, at the end of when we got to the bottom of the mountain, all of the trekkers all took off their clothes and gave our clothes, our boots, our hats, our tents, our sleeping bags, everything to the locals. They sell them in the markets because a lot of them are quite poor. They don't make a lot of money there. So anyway, they're really friendly people, and that helps doing any sort of business there. Yeah. Definitely very welcoming. And, from a exploration perspective, in contrast to dealing with the BLM, for instance, in the US, which is quite, say, laborious and frustrating, it's much easier in Tanzania, much easier. So for drilling, for instance, the process we go through is we need to, again, run this out in the local newspaper, inviting drilling contractors, including local drilling contractors, to tender. We select the driller. We do the water testing before we start drilling, so we can have some baseline. And then we write a letter to the government saying we will be in Manyoni on these dates drilling. And off we go. And that's it. The only other step in the whole process is consulting with the locals so they understand what's going on from a diplomacy perspective. Far easier than many countries around the world.
Yeah, well, I sort of sense that with some of the conversations I have is the different approaches to mining globally, and they're constantly sort of pivoting and shifting. And I mean, we talked before about the steps to acquire or to get to the project for one, but also to upgrade it to a JORC 2012. And I mean, going through your brain, I mean, we're sitting here in Perth. It's a bit of a time difference and naturally a bit of a distance to cover by a plane. But going through that, I mean, that would be the first priority. How far ahead are you thinking in regards to the next steps and really bringing this project up to really commercial?
So we've just set up an office in Dar. We have a local geologist who fortuitously, Robe is his name, but fortuitously for us, he worked on the project from 2004 to 2009 or thereabouts with Uranex. So he actually discovered the original resource. So having him on our team now and having him on the ground, extremely helpful because again, from Perth, it's very hard to get things done.
Yeah.
There's a 5-hour time difference. It's actually quite easy to get there. I left on a Sunday night, and I was in Dar the Monday afternoon, and I was in meetings after lunch on Monday. So from that perspective, it's easy. But ultimately, you need
boots on ground.
You need boots on ground. So we've got a geologist. We're looking for another geologist as well. A team to start working on the drill rig. We're just about to employ an office manager. We've got lawyers over there who assisted us with Bowmans, who've done a great job assisting us with in-country knowledge and also with due diligence. We're using PwC, who are helping us over there with basically the taxes, the TRA, etc. So we've already got a number of consultants we've already engaged. And again, even though we haven't completed the acquisition yet, we're marching full steam ahead on the basis that it's going to happen. And look, we can jump forward a few steps if you want.
Yeah.
The two conditions precedent, which are still outstanding, firstly is shareholder approval. That's slated for the end of next month, shareholder meeting. We've just had it signed off by ASX, just going through ASIC at the moment. I'm the largest shareholder from Moab, so I'll of course be voting it. I can't see why any shareholder would vote against it.
Would agree, yeah.
And then secondly, we need FCC approval. FCC is the Fair Competition Council. It's equivalent to our ACCC, anti-competitive behaviour. If we had 10 other uranium projects or mines over there, and we're buying another one and we're going to create a monopoly, it'll be an issue, but this is obviously an issue, so that should sail through. It's advice from our lawyers, so no problem. So we'd expect to complete June, July this year. Now, going back a few steps to what our next couple of steps are, yes, of course, the primary focus is to convert that existing 20.5 million pounds into a JORC 2012 resource. At the same time, we're drilling. If we can get enough drill rigs, we can do it simultaneously. Otherwise, it'll just flow on straight away. And luckily, we're coming up to the dry part of the year, which is the best time for drilling, obviously.
Yeah.
No problems from an access perspective. It's a little bit muddy over there on the Manyoni project. But we'll also be drilling around another 300 holes. So in total, around 600 holes, up to 25 metres deep. First 300 will be for the compliance for JORC. Yep. The second 300 holes will be in an effort to increase the size of the resource. Because obviously if we can increase the size of the resource, that improves economies of scale. We might be able to locate some higher grade resources as well. It just changes everything essentially. So come the end of this year, calendar year, we should be in a position to announce that JORC 2012 resource, and hopefully an extended resource as well.
Yeah, and I mean, you said there that you're one of the major shareholders and, of course, the managing director. I mean, you're building up this team on the ground, but I can imagine there's a few other directors either based in Perth or spotted across other parts of the globe potentially. So who else is on the team or surrounding you in this company?
Look, the biggest help at the moment, or the most help I'm getting, is from Jeff Balfe, our consulting geologist. He's got a wealth of experience. He's done a lot of work in Africa. He's had some uranium exposure as well, which is very helpful. And I get on with him well, which is probably equally as important. And then our chairman, Brian Hughes, he's got a lot of corporate experience and significant amount of resource experience as well. And he's a chairman of Pitcher Partners here in Perth. And I've personally been friends with him for 20 years, which is helpful as well. And then we also have Dave Wheeler on the board. He has a wealth of corporate experience, particularly doing deals. He's a bit older than me, and what comes with age often is experience.
Yep.
And of course, he's got a lot of experience in resources as well. He's also a director of Taurana Resources. They have a lithium project in Angola, so he understands Africa, which is that's definitely helpful as well. So I've surrounded myself with a good team. We've got Melissa Chapman and her business partner as well, and they act as CFO on COSEC. She's very experienced, so that's very helpful as well.
And with uranium, we've talked about the price point now becoming feasible for a lot of projects to come back online. I mean, looking at the thematics behind uranium, I think it's potentially unlikely that it retreats back to its doldrums that it had with, the advancements of nuclear energy and just what we're looking forward towards, global renewable energies. I mean, how do you potentially see the uranium market sort of unfolding and, I guess, giving you confidence and also the shareholders' confidence that this is a project and company that will continue to grow as this space, the uranium space continues to charge ahead?
Look, I think given that, if you go back a few steps, it was August 2021 that the price of uranium was $28 US a pound. Today, at the spot prices, I think just over, it was $89.35 US this morning. That's changed everything. Even the Octavo project, which is south of Manyoni, that's adjacent to the Rosatrom Nyota project. That has a resource pre-JORC 2012, 152 million pounds at 286 ppm uranium. They're in the process of getting the mine permit for that. So There's obviously in the last year when the price of uranium has stepped over that $50 to $60 a pound mark US, and which was always seen as the tipping point for exploration, the bigger mines, producers to start back up again, etc. Everything's all changed as of last year, which is fantastic and great. It's great timing from Moab, right price, right time. Yeah, and again, like we discussed before, it's all about for explorers the ability to raise capital.
Yeah,
ability to raise capital and at what price is paramount. Right now, if we had to do a capital raise, we'd have no problems whatsoever. We don't have to do a capital raise, and we're probably not going to do a capital raise till post drilling. If we are able to convert that resource, possibly extend the resource as well, then next year we'll be looking to do a PFS. Yeah, start the PFS.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of what I'm understanding as well. As I've seen uranium, I've been a bull for quite some time, and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching it emerge and come out of this sort of doldrum that everyone really just no one wanted to hear about it. And now it's finally at a point where projects can come back online and it's feeding into exploration. And goes without a doubt, it's been a tough ride for many small caps over the past handful of years, and it's good to see that it's now breaking out. But I like rounding out these conversations with a typical, top 3 key takeaways that investors and shareholders and everyone alike can think about. So if I pose that question to you for Moab Minerals, what are the 3 key takeaways that people can anticipate or coming over the next 12 months from our conversation today?
Okay. Firstly, we expect to settle the acquisition June, July. Probably June, but I'd rather say June, July, because it's conditional upon FCC approval is one of those conditions precedent which must be satisfied. So that's the first thing. Secondly, we expect to be drilling June, July. And again, that's for 2 reasons. One, to convert that existing resource of 20.5 million pounds up to a JORC 2012 resource. And secondly, to extend the resource. Then next year we'd be looking to start the PFS on the Manyoni project. But 4th point would be the Octavo project has got a lot of potential as well.
Don't sleep on it, yeah.
I know, we are pressing ahead with that. We're looking at what radiometric surveys if we can get over it, and we'll start exploration on that as well. But that won't be a priority. Okay. But we'll have that bubbling away in the background.
Yeah. I feel 3 is usually just way things remember, but 4 is completely fine. And I appreciate it. Yeah. So for listeners, is another bit?
Oh, no, the only other thing I'd like to say is that, one of the reasons uranium has done so well, we can't underestimate, is the effect, the Sprott effect. With that Sput, when he started up, the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, that was the main catalyst for the increase in the price of uranium. Yeah. And, hats off to Eric Sprott, recognising that opportunity. I mean, it was quite a fragmented industry, being the wholesale and distribution of uranium worldwide, and he has been able to buy all that physical uranium. It appears that it'll end up like De Beers controlling the price of diamonds, where the Sput will end up controlling the price of uranium, which at this stage, if they can keep it at these sort of levels, will bring a lot of joy to explorers and eventually uranium producers.
Yeah. Well, and from the other end, we're seeing, nuclear reactors being built up everywhere besides Australia. China has a huge fleet coming online. I think Japan is restarting theirs, the US, there's no shortage, and all of these need feed in
that's
the
right. Look,
sense, yeah.
I'm a director of European Lithium, so I obviously follow the lithium space very, very closely. And, all world leaders have now recognised that in order for them to achieve the 2050 carbon emission targets, they need to do 2 things. Firstly, they need to get rid of petrol and diesel vehicles on the road, hence the EVs and the demand for lithium. And secondly, the world needs to move over from burning of fossil fuels like coal to generate power, and it needs nuclear power.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the efficacies of nuclear, I'm no expert, but it's evolved so much, the technology, and it's almost those preconceived notions that people have of nuclear reactors and some of the incidents that have occurred. It's not necessarily doomed to repeat itself, but there's always that holdout. I feel it's got that sort of clove over it. People talk about nuclear bombs and all of that. There's just this cloud over uranium. But no, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. For those that are wanting to follow Moab Minerals and stay in contact as the company progresses through these, I mean, where can people go to keep an eye on Moab Minerals?
Oh, probably just the website, moabminerals.com.au. Look, and I know I take calls from investors as well, provided they don't have too many questions.
Yeah, I'm only fortunate enough I get you on a podcast. But I appreciate it, and I believe there's the social pages and, of course, the ASX announcements. That's always a good spot to keep up to date with market-sensitive commentary. But, yeah, thank you.
Maybe not social pages for...
Oh, not as active yet. Well, they were potentially in the future. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Well, you're on a podcast now, so it's coming out.
No, yeah, that's right. And there's definitely Twitter.
Yes. Yeah. But no, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens, and best of luck with everything. And I'll get you back for hopefully your second or third podcast in the future.
That was good. Well done, Ben. Thanks for that. Great.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. Please remember that the topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial advice. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to like, share, and follow. You can follow the Market Bull on all our socials and keep up to date with global market insights.